Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Let's Write Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are writing a D&D adventure in real time, right here on the channel, so we can show all of all the ups and downs, all the warts and all, as I like to say. I'm RJ Kerr. I am, as always, your host. And today we are picking up with the campaign that we've been working on for a couple sessions now. I think we're in the 10th session of working on this campaign, um, where we have, or I should say, are in the process of creating our own domain of dread, in which the characters will need to escape from. So we were started this off by using a slightly different narrative structure than we've used in the past. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Um, so we're using the story circle structure, which still follows, Freytag's pyramid, if you're familiar with that. But it creates kind of a loop where we have a place for the characters to kind of introduce themselves and get situated, for them to discover what it is that they need to do, places for them to get proactive and start searching for something that they need to escape this domain of dread. The moment when they find it and the tables kind of turn and they learn something vital to their success, something that's or twist, if you will. Then more places for them to take that information and get proactive, and then come to the climax of the adventure, and finally decide whether or not they will escape the domain of dread, and then what will happen at the end. So we've been working our way through these kind of step by step, and so we are currently in need. And this is a initial adventure, our first adventure that our characters will encounter, in which they have been kidnapped and by superior force from a faction led by an aboleth, and they are enslaved briefly, but freed from their enthrallment by the intervention of an agent from a Slide-led faction. The characters then must escape the aboleth's lair and be re-enslaved. And then, of course, during the course of this adventure, they discover that the aboleth is seeking the artifact, an artifact of great power that will give godlike control over the domain of dread, and that this artifact is the character's best resource for getting out of this domain. So we've done a lot of this so far, and frankly, we've got most of this filled out. I would even go so far as to say that if you were running this for your table, we have enough that you could sit down and run it and just kind of fill in the places that are empty, kind of as you go along. So I think today we are going to spend our time kind of mopping up the last few bits of detail in here, um, and just kind of polishing this out, and then we should be done with our first adventure. Huzzah! So, um, if you are just joining me for the very first time, we kind of work on this together. This is a collaborative kind of experience. And so please feel free to toss in your thoughts and opinions into the chat as we go, and we can incorporate those into the story as we work, into the adventure as we work. So let's kind of do a little survey here. Let's see what we're missing. We need to figure out what we're going to do for the opening scene, the initial kidnapping, if you will. Whether we want to make that kind of um, a, a truly role play experience, or whether we want to make that kind of a scene cut. And we've got, those are kind of our two options there, and there's pros and cons to both, right? So if the characters are, if we're actually gonna role play this out, the benefit there is we're giving our players more agency. They have got the opportunity to actually maybe not get kidnapped. Um, that then, of course, presents the problem of, well, what do we do with the rest of the adventure? We have to come up with some reason for the characters to then engage with the adventure. If they don't kind of start out as kidnapped, and it changes the dynamic of what we've created so far. The scene cut style is kind of, we open up with narrative exposition as this is stuff that's already happened. and that removes some player agency. It removes their ability to make some of the choices, but it gets us in the action a little bit faster. Um, Although arguably negligibly faster. Um, but two, it sets us up to start where we had planned to start. And frankly, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer for this. I typically am of the mind of, more player agency, the better. And if I was running this for my table, um, I probably would play out the kidnapping and have kind of that opening evolution, knowing that I can probably overwhelm the characters and get them where I want them to be anyway. But that there's always the chance that they'll escape, that they won't end up where I want. And I'll just have to kind of think on my feet and go from there. But I'm comfortable doing that at my own table. But when I'm writing this, since we're kind of writing this for everybody, and we're not sure who's going to play this yet, I think maybe we should go with the cutscene style here, where we're kind of opening up with, well, you've been kidnapped. Um, and I'm always hesitant because that feels a little railroady, but then I think back to my very first D&D adventure ever, not as a DM, but the first one I ever played. This was first edition basic D&D, way back when, before there was a difference between species and class, if you can imagine such a time in the game. And the first adventure that I ever played started out very much like this, where our characters had been kidnapped, um, and we didn't question it. It was just like, okay, yeah, we've been kidnapped, and now we have to escape. That's what we have to do. There was just that sense of buy-in. So Moribund, my table would accept this as a campaign buy-in, give it an opening montage, and hit the ground. Yeah. So it really is going to depend on your table. I have played games with folks who would absolutely not accept this, who would argue that they would make different decisions and they might be able to escape. But I think a lot of tables would go in with the buy-in on this. So I say we do this as a buy-in. We kind of take this as a given. The characters have been kidnapped. And this also gives us kind of a place to work in this Slod-led faction, this agent, because I don't necessarily think that as we've kind of built this out, I think that we need to hint that this agent exists. I don't see a place for us to really be interacting with said agent yet. Perhaps there's a calling card that's left. Perhaps there's a hint as to what has transpired. So I think we're writing almost box text here, kind of the opening montage as Moribund put it, for how this adventure starts. So let's do that. Okay, so we're gonna go with scene cut style. And you can go take two kind of approaches with this. Excuse me, I'm not feeling super well tonight, so I might be drinking a lot more water than I normally do. Right, so there's a couple avenues we can take with this. We could go with actually writing literal box text, what we're going to read out to the characters or read out to the players when we run this, or we can write this as kind of bullet points of bulleted key points, which I think is probably what we're going to do for this. We don't always need box text to explain it, although if I was running this for myself, I would probably write box text, because as I've mentioned before, starting an adventure is usually the trickiest place for me. That's where I want like the most tools at my disposal. I want like the most built out bit is getting things off to a good start, because then I can kind of play things from there a little more easily. But let's go with a bullet point. I don't think most people need that crutch. So, all right. Let's initial situation. for me, I do box text in the player's guide and then sum up during the openings as Moribund. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. It's really whatever works for you. I find it's wherever is the stickiest place for you is where you need the box text, and in any place that you can improvise, you find yourself improvising well. You don't need it as much, and I think that's different for every DM personally. I think everybody's a little bit different there, because I mean I've seen guides, especially in like Shadow Dark and what have you, where there's almost no box text. It's just bullet point descriptions, and you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants on that kind of thing. Or I've seen other ones that are for example, like the D&D starter sets where there's box text for just about everything, to kind of give you that scaffolding to work from. Um, and so yeah, I think it's just a matter of preference. More about how long is your average table session? I actually run relatively short ones. I run for 2 to 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours on the outside. When I'm playing with my friends, it's usually just a 2 hour session. Like friends and family, I usually run a 2 hour session. When I'm doing a paid game, it's usually a 2.5 to 3 hour session. Um, I find that it's enough time to kind of get some stuff done, but it's not so much time that it's hard to commit to that on a reoccurring basis. And that's just kind of what I've worked out. Now I play paid games every week, whereas I do the games for my friends and family are an alternating and every other week kind of setup. If you're playing, once a month, I'd probably say 4 hours is probably where I'd go. So you have like a block that you get through. I will say that short games less sporadically, your short games that you have bigger gaps in between, it becomes so much easier for the characters to kind of lose the thread of what's happening. So it really depends, but typically I'm a 2 to 3 hour, just depending on what my structure is, kind of game session. I think that's all good. All of mine are 3 hours, and I run one and play in two. Yeah, 3 hours is a nice length of time. I find I get a little itchy around 4 hours, a little antsy in my seat. But that's me, not wanting to sit still. Some people can really focus in for that 4 hour period, or even I've played games that we played all day, an 8 hour stretch, and that was long. That was a long session. I don't know if I recommend those, but they're fun every once in a while. All right, so the initial situation. So where do they get kidnapped? How and where should our players get kidnapped? Because I think we talked initially about this being kind of a homage to old Portland, old Seattle, where there would be bars with trap doors built in the floor, and so people would get kidnapped like straight off the the barroom floor, and then quote unquote shanghaied, right, where they would get kind of pressed onto a ship and they'd be out at sea by the time that they realized that they had been kidnapped. So maybe we should do something like that, which means that we have our characters opening up in an initial village, one of the ones that we've come up with, which I think is probably pretty good because we want them to have kind of a little bit of a grounding in this U section here, so they kind of have some footing to understand where they are. So yeah, so I guess it starts in a tavern. We can start somewhere else if you guys want, if you've got other ideas. But getting kidnapped in a tavern was a real thing once upon a time, so maybe we start there. All right. Good, I'm not bold texted here. All right. Let's see. The characters are set upon. As much as I like the trapdoor kind of thing, well, we could do it. What do you think? Should they? Because that kind of requires them to end up in a specific place, which we can't necessarily assume. We can know what kind of town they're going to end up in because we can start the adventure wherever we want, but we don't necessarily know where they're going to investigate or what they're going to check out first. The tavern's kind of an obvious choice. They're likely to go there, so they could kind of go through trapdoors in the floor and get kidnapped that way, or they could get set upon in their sleep. Um, what do you think? I'm feeling indecisive about that this evening here. Um, it'll probably be easier to, to guarantee that they get attacked in their sleep. We could do it. We could actually do both. We could set it up so that it just depends on where they go. That they get kidnapped no matter what, but the manner of which of their kidnapping depends on what choices they make. Maybe that's a way to work in just a little bit of extra player agency. Um, okay, the characters are set upon by agents of the Aboleth led faction. Shouldn't be agents, should be cultists. We've already kind of established that. Cultists of the Aboleth led faction. In one of two ways. Let's see here. We'll say tavern trap doors. The village tavern owner is in league with the cultist kidnappers and has built trap doors into the floor of the tap room. Drunk. Oh, hold on, before we get ahead of myself, we got some comments in the chat here. Let's see. Jonathan, did you decide how the characters end up here? Is it like Ravenloft mists or a physical portal? I think we had talked about doing that kind of Blood Moon portal, hadn't we? Where tales of treasure and glory and adventure through a portal that opens up underneath the Blood Moon. So once in a while, and the characters kind of go through on their own as part of so as part of the U section, right, where they would go through. They find themselves in this domain of dread, realize that they're trapped here, and now they're exploring the initial village, kind of finding their footing and understanding their situation. Because I think what we had talked about, and it's kind of the idea I've been operating under. It's probably worthwhile for us to go back and fix that a little more officially. Moribund, do the players start out knowing that they are cultists, or is it something that they discover? So, that the members of the village are cultists, or that there are cultists in the village, or that the Aboleth faction people are cultists. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that they kind of come to understanding, as they're have been kidnapped and trying to escape. It's also kind of our it's shorthand for us as the DM as well to kind of categorize the attitudes of these people, of these bad guys. And it's not necessarily important, I think, for the characters to understand that they are quote unquote cultists, merely that they're all a part of this Aboleth-led faction, which I think will be fairly obvious as the adventure unfolds. At least I hope it is. Comes back to, I think we talked about on Wednesday, that editing phase. It's worthwhile giving everything a read through after you've done it to make sure that the things you think are obvious actually are. Jonathan, okay, portal could open into the city, on the docks, in a warehouse or something. and the tavern could be on the docks. Yeah, absolutely. It could open up just outside the town. It could be, right there. So it's maybe it opens up on a hill just outside of the town, and so we can have kind of an opening cinematic view of this, of the enormous, lake that kind of forms the center of this, and kind of see the ruins along the shore, and see see one of the towns, one of the villages set up nearby. Um, like, the Ravenloft Mists. One of the things that I think it does really well, opening that adventure, when you is that you follow the mists and you end up in the village of Barovia, which is overlooked by the imposing structure of Castle Ravenloft, right? So you start the adventure off where the characters are getting their footing, and now they have a view of kind of the situation that they're in. In that case, it's less of a cinematic view, and it's more of a, you get the impression of the castle as it looms up above. But it paints a picture for the world that exists. And I think that we could do something similar to that, when the portal kind of opens up, and have a situation where, depending on where we choose for it to open up, we can pick a place that kind of epitomizes the situation that the characters find themselves in. Set the stage emotionally, as it were. Jonathan, okay, maybe the time they show up will have an effect. They arrive in the evening instead of midday, for example. Yeah, I'm a big fan of having adventurers show up at towns, in the twilight, because it forces them to focus their exploration of the town to what is most important to them. When you kind of give them the, okay, you've arrived, but there's only a couple hours till all the shops close, or only an hour or so till all the shops close, and the businesses start shifting over to the evening. I think it gives a little atmosphere, and two, it gets your players going, okay, well, instead of searching every square inch of this village, like, first thing before we go find a tavern and find out what's going on, okay, I've got one or two things that I can accomplish, and then I need to go find a place to hunker down for the night, and then we can, then you can kind of finds naturally leads them into sort of your rumor mill, right? Where they can start to learn about the situation that they're in, and gather information that they can use to make decisions going forward. So yeah, we're coming up with some good ideas for you here. Let's jump over here and let's make some notes. So let's see here. Instead of making comments, let's add some questions for brainstorming here, because we're going to want to do some proper brainstorming. Questions for storming. How do the characters arrive? Blood Moon Portal? Question mark. Where does the portal open up? What vignette would be most, I'm going to say, emotionally characteristic, but you kind of get what I mean, that we're kind of setting the stage here, so we want it to be a representative kind of vignette, opening vignette of where the characters appear. Make it representative of the situation they're in, would be most emotionally representative of the situation the characters find themselves in. What time of day is it? Twilight's shops still open, closing soon. Yeah. Okay. Some things that we'll chew on when we get to we do our brainstorming for our opening exposition. Something that I realize I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit. Apologies, I need a little more water. Something that kind of occurs to me as we're working on this is if, we have adventurers who are, loaded up with their gear, they're full of, piss and vinegar, as you will, they charge in through this portal in the Blood Moon, they find themselves in this domain of dread and they're exploring, and then we kidnap them and immediately strip them of all their stuff. So something we might, not saying we shouldn't do that. In fact, I think we should do that. We should continue to do that. But something we might do here is mention that, in the armory section, that, any of their personal equipment might be found here, especially items that might be of personal value to the characters, because you could always have, a character who's, this long sword was been in my family for 13 generations, and, that kind of deal. You don't want them to go, well, too bad, it's gone now, it's been sold. Although could be fun that they have to try their side quests as they're trying to track it down, where did it go, that kind of deal. But we might put just a comment in the armory here that characters might recover some of their own equipment in this space as well. That way, we're not, if somebody's really attached to a particular piece of equipment, we're not, taking it away from them forever. There's a place for them to get it back. All right. Cool. So let's get back to our opening. Let's get back to planning our kidnappings. Things that people could take out of context in my stream. Okay, the village tavern owner is in a league with the cultist kidnappers and has built trapdoors into the floor of the tap room. Drunks and adventurers are targeted for kidnapping. Drinks may be drugged and unsuspecting victims are dropped through the floor to the waiting kidnappers below. I will say, if you're gonna do anything like drugging drinks or what have you in your adventure, I highly recommend running that kind of thing by your players during a session 0 before you actually do that, because that can be very triggering for some people. So, there's dark themes in a domain of dread. All kinds of stuff. Just look at the Curse of Strahd. There are some dark themes in there. They can be triggering to some people, and so we want to make sure that our players feel safe at our tables. So just, as we're kind of working through this, we may work some dark themes into here. It's not a, hey, you should throw this at your players. This is a, hey, if we want to use this, we want to make sure we run this kind of stuff by our players first, so we don't give anybody a bad day at the table. Okay, another comment. Let's see here. Morbund. A wizard I played had a pipe handed down by his teacher that disappeared one day, and it was an entire side quest to recover it. It was fun. Yeah, it again, it comes down to the kind of players that you have, right? Are they the kind of players that are going to be, really engaged by this, like, I had this thing and I lost it and now I need to get it back? Or are they going to be the kind of players that just that upsets them, that that they get frustrated because they had this cool thing and now they don't have it anymore? So, you know, as with anything, as with any adventure, it's going to come down to kind of knowing your players and knowing what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with. But giving ourselves little places where we can readjust things as necessary is useful, especially if we're playing with people that we haven't played with before. Okay, Tavern Trapdoors, and then let's say call this Hoods in the Night section here. And these shouldn't be initial situation. This should be the adventure hook. Adventure hooks. Because we have reframed this. All right, Hoods in the Night. Wherever the characters bed down for the night, they are set upon in their sleep by cultist kidnappers. I'm envisioning kind of, since we're doing this as a cutscene, I'm envisioning this as a vignette where you know, you kind of have one of those, you know, you're asleep, they're asleep, they're asleep, and all of a sudden there's a bag, you know, shoved over their heads, and they're, you know, knocked over the back of the head, knocked out, and trundled off. So maybe we work some of that in here. Burlap sacks are shoved over their heads before each is knocked unconscious. Cool. Coming round. The characters return to consciousness several days later in Area 1. They have been under the thrallment of the Aboleth and working as slaves in an excavation site, searching for an artifact of great power. Characters are aware of this as they awaken from their enthrallment and let's hear more about it. Another option would be to have the framed and delivered to the cultists to work off their debt to society as a way for townsfolk to keep up appearances, perhaps as a social encounter kind of way. Oh yeah. Do it as a frame up job and they get arrested. Yeah, sure. Well, why not? Let's toss that in there. Yeah. Nothing wrong with having more hooks for ways that this kind of happens, and then you can kind of feel your way out with your players, and actually this could be kind of a cool way to get a party kind of together, right? Where maybe, you know, your characters don't start the adventure knowing each other. They've come through, you know, these portals and ended up here in town at differing times. And because maybe there's more than one entrance, maybe there's more than one way in. And you can have some of them get kidnapped at the tavern. You can have some of them get set on as they're sleeping, and others are framed for a crime and and turned over. I did that with a Curse of Strahd campaign once, where I used all of the different. I had like 6 or 7 players in that adventure. It was a big group, and I used all the different hooks for it. And it was just kind of an easy way to come up with multiple reasons why people ended up in the mists, and now they're kind of thrown into this situation together, and it creates kind of we're a team by association. They didn't have to have a reason why they all knew each other or an elaborate backstory. They were just kind of thrown into the mix together and had no reason not to work together. So multiple hooks are great. Framed, let's see here. The characters are almost immediately accused of a crime and found guilty. They are turned over to the cultists as a work release program. Okay, yeah, that's another cool one. I like that. Good suggestion, Morbun. Okay, so where was I? The characters are aware. Okay, so we put a little information the characters are aware of when they begin their adventure. Now, I kind of want to work in an awareness, or at least a hint about this Slaad-led faction, because so far we've got nothing other than they're the reason that the characters are able to escape. We need some kind of hint of their existence, because we want the characters potentially seeking them out as a potential ally, or at least aware of them going forward. But there isn't a good place to have kind of a pointer character, if you will, an NPC that knows what's happened in this situation. So maybe there's a cryptic note of some kind, or some other clue that's left behind. The cryptic note seems the easiest thing to have. A note that the characters they're coming around as they're coming out of the unconsciousness of enthrallment, and realizing their situation. One of them discovers they've got a note that's been tucked into their breast pocket or something like that, that wasn't there before. Jonathan says a calling card, a symbol, a token. Yeah. I was thinking that was probably a little bit light on the information, but perhaps that's for the best. Let's see here. What about meeting someone when they first arrive, then again at the bar, who has no memory of meeting them? Moribund. Maybe. I think, what if we did both? What if we work into the U section, we can get a cast of characters on here. What characters would be, well, let's see here. Let's differentiate. What NPCs would be characters encounter in their shortly after their arrival? Agents of each faction, because we could have a character that they meet at the beginning that is that is the agent from the Slod-led faction. So we can introduce that person early on. We don't have to introduce them as a member of that faction, just get them kind of on stage, as it were, so that they're an NPC that the characters have bumped into. Then we can leave this calling card, this token, if you will, as Jonathan frames it, that's been kind of slipped into the players, again, like a pocket or something for of the characters. That's mysterious. It's a symbol. They don't know what it means, but they know that it's important somehow, because why would anybody leave it if it wasn't important? And they can then discover that a symbol associated, after they escape, after they're exploring around and kind of trying to figure out what to do, where to go, and gain more information, they can discover that symbol associated with this NPC that they had met previously. And it's an easy thing to do. Your players will think that you have put layers upon layers of all kinds of cool shit into the story. If you just get people on early that are going to be important later, get NPCs in early that are going to be important later, yeah, that could be one way we could do this. I kind of like that. Moribund says maybe this calling card leads them to a location, which is the trap they fall into. Yeah, I mean, we might. This calling card would be for the Slod-led faction, right? So that would be for the. I'm not going to call them the good guys. They're not the good guys. But for the opposition to the Aboleth-led faction. So I don't know that it would work to get them to have the calling card lead them to the trap, to this initial trap, unless there's unless we kind of want to flip the script and say that they're lured by a member of the Aboleth faction initially as well. And that could be additional hook. They get lured by a member of this faction that we get on stage kind of early. We get into the game kind of early, and I have to figure out how we would do that. How would they get lured? There's ways to do that. I just let's have to think about that for a second. I get too many things bouncing around in my head at the moment. Let's put down the bit about the calling card. Let's put the token. And because let's give ourselves that little toy to work with later. And Moribund, yeah, it could be a red herring. Yeah, it could. It absolutely could be. But let's put it in there for us so that we have it and we can use it later as we're kind of building out this campaign. It's useful for us to implant hooks for ourselves in here that we don't know if they're going to connect to yet. We just know that they may connect to something later on. It's useful for us to have that in here. So let's go ahead and get it. Let's see here. Calling card. Let's see here. A bronze token. Say like a challenge coin, if you're familiar with those. A bronze token, like a challenge coin, from the Slod-led faction has been left in one PC's pocket as a calling card. The PCs have no idea what it means initially, but the symbol is distinct and one they can look for later. Calling card as a calling card when the Slod agent freed the PCs from their enthrallment. Okay, let me read that sentence to make sure it actually makes sense. A bronze token, like a challenge coin from the Slodlid faction, has been left in one PC's pocket as a calling card when the Slod's agent freed the PCs from their enthrallment. The PCs have no idea what it means initially, but the symbol is distinct and one they can look for later. Cool. All right, I think that gives us our opening scene. That kind of gives us our hooks into how the characters get into here, or how they get into this adventure. We've got the adventure pretty much built out. There's a couple places where where we haven't named things. For example, we haven't come up with the Warlock spell list. We don't have a name for our cult leader. We put a placeholder for the ritual purpose, although I think we already figured this out. He's leading the congregation of cultists in a dark ritual to let's see here. We said to summon a manifestation of their Aboleth master. Cool. So we're just kind of cleaning up the last little bits here. Let's find a cult leader name. Let's at least get that done. Tom Cleveland says, broad cue to ask about whenever. Curious about whether campaigns tend to end up with one of the player characters being the main character. How to tailor challenges and obstacles for everyone. That is a really good question, because you do end up in situations where you can very easily end up with a main character and everybody else becomes kind of sidekicks. You don't want that to happen. I find that the best way to avoid that is being really proactive about making sure that everybody gets their time on screen. So what I do when I'm actually running games, and it is breaking up the turn order, right? So that I kind of think of everything that's happening kind of 10-minute intervals. And so, okay, what's your character doing? And somebody will describe to me what their character is doing, and they'll get detailed and they'll want to do this, and I'll, let them talk and have their moment. And then we go, okay, great. Well, your character's doing that. What is, what's character B, what's character C, what's character D doing? And make sure that everybody kind of gets their moment. And sometimes you'll get folks who just go, I'm just kind of tagging along. I don't have anything special I want to do right now. And that's fine. You're giving people that space to do that. So I'd say that's the best way to make sure that you don't end up in a situation where you've got main character syndrome for somebody. But I think more to the point of your question, how do you avoid getting yourself set up in such a way when you're writing an adventure that one character has got the key to solving all of the puzzles and problems, and to that, I just say you just kind of try to set up a broad variety of challenges. I try not to double up too much on challenges in an adventure, where we want things to feel kind of unique in each and every kind of adventure. We want to be a little bit different, but there are specific themes. Everybody's got some fighting capability in D&D, and so fights are a good way to be kind of somewhat equal. As you learn your players and you learn their abilities, knowing that, maybe you build some challenges that are great for the rogue. Other challenges that are really useful for the cleric or the paladin that use their special abilities. And you just kind of get creative about that. And it's just knowing your team. You know, for example, one of something I would have never thought of, admittedly, but like in the Sunless Citadel, that published adventure was originally for third edition. Now they've got it as redone for fifth edition, and I've run it a couple times. But there is a door that unlocks when a cleric uses Turn Undead, um, and so that's kind of a cool. It's kind of a cool little puzzle that's specific for a specific class, right? And you can work in stuff like that when you know your party composition. It doesn't always have to be, well, to get through the door, we need to pick it, we need to disable the trap. There can be something that is specific to a particular class. Maybe there's a rite that the monk would know from their monastery or what have you. Maybe there's, you know, to use a, I don't know, a Harry Potter reference, right? You know, what is it, the first book where they end up with, you know, down in the chamber where they've got all the vines that are strangling them or what have you, and that they have to, you know herbology to get past it. Well, maybe the ranger, maybe the druid has got the key to that kind of thing. So it's really just kind of getting to know your group and thinking through how can everybody be useful. Harder to do when you don't know the composition and you're creating an adventure like we are, kind of from scratch without knowing who's going to be involved. So I hope that answers your question, Tom. Moribund. It is always a bad thing. Some players are not comfortable being in the spotlight. So as well, yeah, don't force it. Yeah, absolutely, don't force it. Just give people opportunities. You know, if they don't take the opportunity, it's entirely up to them. But giving people opportunity um, to yeah, to have their moment if they want it is important. All right, we're getting close to our end of the time here tonight. So we may go ahead and wrap up here, but I really want to get this cult leader's name down. Let's name a cult leader. What should their name be? I'm going to pull up in another window, fantasynamegenerator.com. If you guys have idea names, I'd love to hear them. Jim Jones. A little on the nose for what we're going for here, but yeah, definitely that vibe. What is their race, age, and class? To be honest with you, I rarely choose. I usually will feel that out and put that into the moment there, but we can come up with some information on that. Their class is Warlock. We've got that established. Because and we know that it's a male presenting character because we've labeled him as he, first level Warlock. We have him sort of leading a congregation, so he's got to have some sort of, something vaguely religious to his style. I picture him as, well, frankly, I picture him as Elvish. I just, for whatever reason, when I imagine his face, it's got some severe, very sharp kind of angles to it that I kind of associate with some of the artwork of how elves were done, especially in like third edition, that kind of deal. So I imagine him as Elvish. Age, I would say probably middle age, no older than middle age is kind of how I envision. Let's see here, Moribund, Silverius Doomcaller. All right, yeah. What does everybody think? I kind of like that. Silverus Doomcaller. Sure. Boom. That's a heavy hitting name. I like it. All right, let's go ahead and put it where else it needs to be in here. TK Cult Leader. And let's see if there's... What if his followers call him the Doomcaller? Yeah? Yeah? Why not? That would be cool. That would absolutely be cool. Yeah, Doomcaller. Heavy. I like it. I like it. Excellent. All right. Well, we are pretty much at our time for the evening, so I think we're going to go ahead and get wrapped up here. Thank you so much, everybody, for for all of your input this evening. I love working on this kind of stuff with you guys. You guys come up with some great ideas, and we've already got stuff started for our other sections now, which is lovely. So maybe next time we'll jump in and we'll start working on the U, and we'll get into the brainstorming there and kind of sketch out some of this starting village and the NPCs that are there. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. Moribund, it was fun. Have a good night, sir. Yeah, you as well. You as well. Thanks again, everybody. So thanks for joining me. If you want to have, to sit in on some of my more chit-chatty versions of this, I do a Wednesday live stream as well. And that is less about creating an adventure and more about just kind of chatting about TTRPGs in general. So every Wednesday I pick a topic and we have kind of a short conversation about it. Of course, every Monday we continue on with this series. And so I will pick this one back up on Monday the 16th. Cool. And if you ever want to jump into one of my games and see how I actually run them, come check me out on startplaying.games/GM/RJ Kerr. Thank you so much, and I will see you all next time.